Working at the airport wasn't exactly my childhood dream, but it paid the bills. I'd already dealt with stressed passengers, people crying because they'd missed their flight, guys trying to get around the weight of their luggage by stuffing things in their coat pockets, and even a lady who tried to board with a live chicken in her handbag. Yes, it was real, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for her. It was an ordinary morning. The airport lounge was buzzing with hurried travelers and suitcases being dragged around. That's when I heard a bang from across the hall. Something had been thrown onto the floor. Something big, something heavy. I looked up from my computer and saw the woman. Blonde salon hair, huge sunglasses that covered half her face, and an expression like she thought she was entering a red carpet, not a commercial flight. But what really caught my attention were the 20 suitcases she was dragging around, as if she were moving to another continent. I didn't even have to ask. I already knew it was going to be a problem. She walked up to the counter with a confident swagger, took off her glasses, and looked at me as if I were an insignificant ant in her way. I need to check my bags. It was only then that I realized she was unaccompanied. Nobody, absolutely nobody, with an ounce of common sense, travels alone and carries more luggage than an entire soccer team. I entered her details into the system, and that was it. She had an economy class ticket and thought she was the owner of the plane. "Ma'am, the baggage allowance for your ticket allows for one checked bag of up to 23 kilos and one carry-on bag." She blinked, as if she was sure I'd made a joke she didn't understand. "What do you mean? I always travel with all my bags, and I've never paid for it. There you go." The classic, "I've always done that," as if the universe was obliged to bow to her life history. I repeated the information, but she didn't even wait for me to finish before letting out an exaggerated, theatrical sigh. "This is ridiculous. I'm a VIP customer." I glanced at her ticket again. VIP customer? I didn't even have a loyalty card. But of course, that kind of person believes that just because they've spent money on a ticket, they've bought a lifetime pass to impunity. She leaned forward, resting her hands on the counter. "So, you want me to just leave my stuff?" I was tempted to answer yes, preferably her along with the suitcases, but I held back. "No, ma'am, but if you want to take your bags, you'll have to pay for excess baggage." And that's when the real performance began. The first phase was denial. She huffed, rolled her eyes, and pretended I was making up rules on the spot just to annoy her. Then came the bargaining. "But look, some of these suitcases are small. Can't they count as hand luggage?" I took a quick look. Small? The woman had practically moved house. "Ma'am, each passenger is only allowed one piece of hand luggage and one small bag or backpack." Her patience evaporated. Her eyes narrowed and her lips tightened as if she were holding back a scream. "Do you realize who you're talking to?" Oh yes, the veiled threat phase. Here, dear listeners, is when the passenger believes they have a powerful contact who can ruin their life with the snap of a finger. Some people mention lawyers, others claim to know the owner of the airline. This one seemed convinced that she could magically make my job disappear. I just smiled and remained impassive. "Yes, ma'am, I know exactly who I'm talking to, a passenger who has to pay for excess baggage." It was as if I had thrown gasoline on a fire. It exploded. "This is absurd. I travel to Paris, Milan, Los Angeles, always with my suitcases. I've never been charged a penny. It seems we forgot to warn the whole world that this woman had a free pass to violate international baggage rules." She crossed her arms, turned sideways, and began to dramatize to anyone nearby. "This is an outrage! I've never been treated like this before." Which, honestly, was hard to believe. I looked at my watch. It was still early, but I was already sure that this was going to be the longest day of my life, and I had no idea that it had only just begun. If I earned a penny for every passenger who tried to pickpocket me at the airport, I would have retired by now. But this woman? That was a special case. She wasn't just angry. She was indignant. How dare they treat her like a lowly mortal? How could the airline's rules apply to she, While she was making her soap opera scandal, I noticed that some people in the lobby were already paying attention. A couple sitting nearby exchanged glances and started whispering. A man in a cap took his cell phone out of his pocket and discreetly started recording. Ah, what a beautiful moment to be alive. She slammed her hand on the counter, causing some leaves to fly. It won't stay that way. Ah, the classic, a promise of revenge, the final blow for the desperate. Madam, I've explained the rules. If you want to board, you'll have to pay for the excess baggage. Otherwise, I can reschedule your ticket for another day, and you decide how you want to take your bags. It was as if I had suggested that she burn all her clothes in a bonfire. Her face contorted in shock. I have a flight to catch. You want me to just give up on my trip? Honestly, it would be a relief for everyone. I just want you to respect the rules, like any other passenger. But I'm not just any other passenger. And then came the moment that every airport attendant dreads, the emotional breakdown of a spoiled passenger. First, the dramatic silence. She blinked several times, took a deep breath, and started shaking her head, as if convincing herself that none of it was real. Then, the tears. But not real tears. No, sir. They were the tears of people who are used to getting everything by shouting. Those theatrical tears where you make a point of sobbing loudly to make sure everyone around you knows how much you've been wronged. I just wanted to go home. And there was the low blow, the attempt to arouse pity. I'd seen this trick before. In the end, there was always a predictable outcome. Either the person gave up and paid, or someone from the family showed up to pay in their place. Or, before I could finish my thought, she jumped into the personal attack phase. Do you know what your problem is? You're jealous of me. What? You see an independent, successful woman, and you think you can put me down because you're stuck in this miserable job. That's it. Now I was the villain of the story, the oppressor, the cruel monster preventing this poor soul from following her destiny. But she didn't stop there. Oh no! This airport is garbage! I'm going to make a formal complaint. In fact, I'm going to call my lawyer. That made me laugh. What exactly was her lawyer going to do? File a lawsuit against aviation laws? Sue physics for not allowing infinite suitcases to be transported free of charge? That's when she did the unthinkable. She turned around, picked up a suitcase, and threw it down with all her might, making enough noise for the echo to resonate throughout the lobby. By now, everyone was watching. The couple with the suitcases completely stopped what they were doing. The gentleman in the cap was now holding his cell phone in clear view, recording every second. The airport security guard, who until then had just been watching from afar, started walking towards us, and that's when she decided it was a good idea to run. That's right. In the middle of the airport, surrounded by witnesses, cameras, and armed security guards, this woman thought she could run through the gate as if she were fleeing a robbery. She grabbed a wheeled suitcase and tried to cross the restricted area, pushing through the control barriers. It was a spectacle worthy of an award. Her suitcase got tangled in the base of the gate, causing her to stumble and almost fall face first to the ground. The security guard was already half a meter away when she let out a cry of pure despair. "You can't stop me! I have rights!" My God, she was really putting all her money on this crisis of stardom. That's when another voice joined in. "Ma'am, please put down your bag and step away from the boarding area." A second security guard appeared, this time a tall man with an unfriendly face, ready to deal with the situation. She stopped. She looked around, trying to process what was happening. The crowd that had only been whispering before was now openly laughing at her. The man with the cap laughed softly and commented to the woman next to him, "This is better than a movie." She understood. She felt the weight of humiliation, but her ego wouldn't allow her to lose. So, in a last act of desperation, she pointed at me. It was that incompetent employee who caused all this. He's persecuting me. Ah, so now I was a Mexican soap opera villain? The security guard looked at me, then at the computer, then at the 20 suitcases lying on the floor. "You need to leave the boarding area immediately." Her mouth opened, but this time no words came out. She knew she was screwed. And me? Well, I just watched. Because this soap opera was far from over. By now, the show was complete. The airport lounge had turned into a real arena, with passengers watching as if they were waiting for the big finale of an action movie. And the star? Ah, the woman with the 20 suitcases was about to learn that not every scandal guarantees a happy ending. The security guard wasn't messing around. He maintained an impassive expression while she huffed, shivered, and tried to organize her thoughts, clearly looking for a miraculous argument that could save her. But there was no argument that made sense. She was there, in the middle of the airport, surrounded by suitcases thrown on the floor, with dozens of people recording the scene on their cell phones. Well, I just stayed where I was, with my arms folded, waiting to see what the next outbreak would be. The woman took a deep breath, adjusted her posture, and tried to regain her composure. "Okay, I understand. I know it was all a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Really? But you see," she continued, trying to regain control of the situation, "I'm willing to resolve this in a civilized manner." The security guard raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, civilized would have been following the rules. Now you need to step back and cooperate." I felt her ego crack with that sentence. "You don't understand. I have a flight. I have to get on." She tried to argue, as if she were dealing with a hotel clerk trying to get a free upgrade. But the security guard wasn't the type to fall for small talk. "You need to sort out your luggage first. You can't board with that amount of luggage without paying." And that's when the plot twist happened. She reached into her handbag and pulled out her credit card with a theatrical movement, as if she were about to pay a very expensive bill at a fancy restaurant. "How much is it?" The security guard blinked, clearly surprised. The surrounding crowd fell silent. For a second, I thought she had finally accepted reality. But of course she hadn't. She picked up the card, raised it in the air, and shoved it straight in the security guard's face. "Cover it up!" "Oh, no!" A mixture of shock and amusement filled the room. The security guard didn't move an inch. He just looked at the card held out in front of his face, then at the woman, and let out a tired sigh. "Ma'am, this isn't an ATM." The audience laughed. Yes, they laughed out loud. The woman pulled her arm back, still not understanding that her dignity was being ground up like hamburger meat. "But I'm paying," I snorted, preparing to enter the conversation. "Ma'am, payment needs to be made directly into the airline system. If you want to pay now, I can process the charge." She looked at me as if I'd spoken Greek. "But I'm giving you the card. Just swipe it." "Good God," I explained again. She needed to come to the counter, make the payment on the system, and only then could the bags be accepted. But her problem wasn't a lack of understanding. It was a lack of acceptance. She wanted me to magically make her bags disappear from the problem. But that's not how the real world works. And that's when the security guard's patience ran out. "Ma'am, please escort us to a reserved area to talk." He took a step to the side, indicating the direction, but she didn't move. On the contrary, her eyes widened in sheer terror, because now, with all the certainty in the world, she knew she had lost, and her brain fried in an attempt to find a way out. "This is a trap." "Oh no, here we go." She pointed her finger at me, as if she'd just unmasked a grand conspiracy scheme. "This employee planned all this to humiliate me." I don't think I've ever felt so much like laughing and rolling my eyes at the same time. The security guards didn't even blink anymore. They were used to people like this. "You need to leave the boarding area now." She took a step back, then another, and then, in an act of desperation, she did the most ridiculous thing possible. She grabbed her cell phone and pretended she was calling the police. "Yes. Hello? Police? I'm being held hostage at the airport. Yes. Help me." I looked around, hoping that someone would start laughing first, because it was surreal. The security guard crossed his arms and sighed. "Ma'am, I'm the police." That was the final blow. The crowd erupted in laughter. The man in the cap almost dropped his cell phone with laughter. Even the most serious security guard couldn't hide a small smile at the corner of his mouth. And that's when she realized there was no way out. The woman snorted, mumbled something unintelligible, and, without looking at anyone, took out her card and went to the counter to pay for her excess baggage. The silence that settled there was almost poetic. She paid, every penny, and this time without shouting, crying, or pointing fingers, just with defeat on her face. But if you think this story ends here, you're wrong. If this woman had paid for her excess baggage from the start, she would have been on her way to her destination a long time ago. But no, she had to put on an Oscar-worthy show, scream, throw her suitcase on the floor, try to run over security with her credit card, and even pretend she was being kidnapped in the middle of the airport. But, like any chaotic movie, there's always an unexpected post-credits scene. And that scene came when the real cops showed up. Yes, the real ones. Because, you see, after all the tomfoolery, someone actually called the police. And it wasn't the police. "They called for backup?" whispered a passenger next to me, holding back his laughter. Two uniformed officers walked through the lobby, looking around and trying to identify what had happened. Meanwhile, the woman was still trying to recover from the nervous breakdown she had caused herself, trying to type in the PIN on her card, with fingers shaking with rage. The security guard pointed at me. This is where we had a problem. One of the policemen approached and looked at the scene. Suitcases strewn about, a group of passengers clearly enjoying the situation, and a woman who looked like she had bitten into a lemon. "We got a call about a possible crime?" "Ah, now we are." "The big moment." The woman raised her head and saw the policeman, and her brain short-circuited. You could see the desperation in her eyes. Because, my friends, when a person makes a public scene of this level, they need an ending where they come out as the victim or the hero. Only now, she was just the clown. The policeman turned to me and the security guard, waiting for a report. I took a deep breath and summed up the opera. This passenger tried to board with 20 suitcases without paying for excess baggage, refused to follow the airline's rules, caused a ruckus in the boarding area, tried to run through the security barrier, and then pretended to be calling the police, saying she was being held hostage. The policeman's reaction was priceless. He blinked. He smiled slightly in disbelief. He looked at the woman. "Ma'am, you called the police claiming to be being held hostage?" She swallowed. I thought you were abusing my authority as a client." "Oh my God." The policeman let out a long sigh, like someone thinking, "Why didn't I go and be a vet?" "Madam, are you aware that making a false call to the police is a crime?" The color simply evaporated from her face. "What?" She looked around desperately, as if she expected someone to come to her defense. But no, the only sound was a passenger holding back a choked laugh. But I'm the victim here." The policeman crossed his arms. "The victim of what exactly?" She opened and closed her mouth a few times, looking for some excuse, some story that would turn her into the wronged protagonist. But nothing came. Not even the brain of a woman with an inflated ego could come up with a plausible excuse for that circus. The policeman exchanged a quick glance with the airport security guard. Does she need to be detained? And frankly, I thought security would go easy on her. At most, give her a warning, put her name on the blacklist of problem passengers, and leave it at that. But no, the security guard was fed up. "We certainly need to file a police report." She tried to go through the boarding barrier without authorization, and it was at that very moment that she had an emotional mini heart attack. No, wait a minute. This is ridiculous. I just wanted to catch my flight." She looked around for support, but no one felt sorry for her. The policeman pulled out his notebook, ready to write down her details. "I need to see an identity document." The woman, on the other hand, went into panic. This must be a mistake. The policeman completely ignored her plight. One of them checked her documents, gave a few more instructions on the radio, and in less than 2 minutes, Another car arrived. Yes, 2 cars now. I don't know about you, but when a simple standoff at the airport turns into a police operation, there's some serious shit going on. The policeman confirmed something on the radio, made a serious expression, and turned to the woman. "Ma'am, I need you to accompany me to the police station." Now, she's completely lost it. "What? No, you don't understand. I'm a good woman. I was just traveling." But the police didn't even give her time to finish her excuse. And, to the delight of everyone at the airport, the big star of the outbreak was led away in handcuffs. Well, I just leaned against the counter, picked up my cold coffee, and took a sip, savoring the delicious taste of poetic justice. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.